Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about some statement wins from Alabama, Miami, Texas Tech, Cincinnati, and Virginia. Some big time wins from those teams that could very well set the pace for what the CFP is going to look like here pretty soon. And a couple other games that did that this past weekend. We'll start with a huge one in College Station. Texas A&M gets a big time win 31-9 over Mississippi State. This one's a really interesting one for a number of reasons because really Mississippi State was in this game for a comfortable majority of this game. I shouldn't say a lot of this game, but a good majority of this game. Mississippi State was within striking distance. They had the ability to make some plays early in this game and make it much more interesting, take a lead going into halftime, but they left a little bit on the table in a number of ways. A&M gives the ball, or yes, they give the ball away on the 1 yard line from Mississippi State. Then Mississippi State gives it right back, and A&M's able to take a lead going into half, 7-3. It could have been, 10-0. It could have been even 3-0 or 6-0, and then you're having a very different conversation on the Texas A&M side. But when you don't take advantage early against this Texas A&M team, they're going to be able to run on you late. They're going to be able to lean on you because that's one of the meanest and biggest offensive lines you will see in the entire country, with guys like Reuben Owens, who is incredible this past weekend and is a downright special player. Had some injuries early on in his career, but is a uniquely special player that I think is going to be as good as just about any running back in the country going forward. But him, Le'Veon Moss, they have some really special guys. On top of that, you can do some special things with Craver and Concepcion. Obviously, Marcel Reed's going to be a part of that. It is going to be one of the most comprehensive run games that you have to guard all year. There's no doubt about that. They probably got to get a little bit more from Marcel Reed in the pass game in these big time games going forward. But at the end of the day, this is a very physical team. They play the game the right way. They know exactly who they are, which is hugely important right now because look around the country. There's a lot of teams that don't know who they are or they don't know who they want to be going forward. For A&M, they know exactly what they do well, and they do it really, really well. Now, this is going to be something that they're going to have to continue to develop on. They get a Florida team that's really nasty up front, just a little bit nastier than that Mississippi State front that they're going to get this upcoming weekend. And it might be a team that may be a little bit tougher to guard than you thought they were going to be coming in. So we'll see what happens going forward. You got Arkansas, LSU, and Missouri right after that. You could go 4-0. And if you find a way to go 4-0, a lot of confidence in Aggieville, not only to get to the CFP because you feel really confident to get to the CFP if you find a way to go 4-0 in the next four, but at the end of the day to win the SEC, to maybe win a national title, and to become the team in Texas. As crazy as that sounds going into this season, it is absolutely on the table for the Aggies. It's been on the table before, so a lot of things to figure out for them, a lot of stuff still to do, but incredible stuff on this Saturday night. A team that looks a whole lot better than I frankly thought they would look as of right now. For Mississippi State, they go forward to a bye before they get Florida, and then they get Texas. So bowl game's still very much on the table. That should still really be the goal for Mississippi State team that kind of like Florida State, you get that big win early in the season. Maybe some expectations get a little bit out of whack, but at the end of the day, this is still a very good team. They're still making steps forward, feel really good about what Jeff Lebby's building down there. Just one of those games where you didn't take advantage of all the opportunities you were given, and you ran into a team that's just bigger, stronger, and a little bit more physical than you are as of right now. Georgia was able to get a pretty comfortable win, 35-14 over Kentucky. This feels like the game that Georgia absolutely needed. There's no doubt about that. You lose that game to Alabama, you're having a lot of questions about what you are going forward, who you're going to be, and you find a way to just kind of find even ground. It's not necessarily the most explosive football in the world. It's not necessarily going to be around Georgia with Kirby Smart, but they found a way to run the football, and I think that offensive line continues to get better. Monroe Freeling did go down in this game, which is something to watch, but sounds like he's going to be okay. I don't know what that means for this upcoming weekend against Auburn, but at the end of the day, this is a very good team. It feels like they're finding kind of their identity, finding where they want to kind of do work. It's going to be a tough game this weekend in Auburn, Alabama, and then it's Ole Miss at home. So doesn't get a whole lot easier for Georgia. They're going to still have to play some really elite football, but you got to feel really good about your chances if you're Georgia. If you win these next two games, you feel great about your chances to get to the CFP, to get back to the SEC championship, maybe win it again, and be in a great position moving forward. That Auburn game is going to be really interesting, so we'll definitely watch that going forward. For Kentucky, I'm going to leave you alone. I don't think it's going to get a whole lot better. I don't think they think it's going to get a whole lot better. So I'll go ahead and leave you alone just for a little bit here. That was a tough game. I don't think they're going to get a whole lot easier the rest of the way, but who knows? Maybe you get a one big time upset and that's enough, but I think everyone understands what's going on up there in Lexington. I won't pile on too much on the Wildcats. Michigan able to get a win 24-10 over Wisconsin. I think you got to feel better about that pass game coming out of this game. Now, the weird thing about this one is you did kind of get stopped on the ground, is to be expected in some respects against Wisconsin, but something to watch going forward when they play some other elite teams, some other Ohio States, and they find a way to can they find a way to run the ball on them, because I don't think you're going to find a way to throw the ball. But in this game, Donovan McCulley went for over 100 yards. Andrew Marsh is a freshman that's going to be an incredible player and a very important player for this offense moving forward. You got to feel good about what you have in Bryce Underwood. I still think there's questions about what that looks like against the elite teams on your conference, on your schedule moving forward. You got to feel really good about what you have right now. And you head to LA this upcoming weekend against USC. Probably got to put together your best offensive performance to date, if I'm being totally honest, to win that game. Feel pretty good that they're going to be able to do that. They continue to get better. They continue to kind of add things to that passing game. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what Michigan can be. Still a lot on the table, but I think they're in a position to really make some interesting moves going forward, especially if they can win this game this upcoming weekend. Wisconsin's in bad shape, and they get Iowa, Ohio State, Oregon, Washington, Indiana, and Illinois. I think everyone understands what's happening in Madison. I think Luke Fickell's era is going to come to an end kind of unceremoniously, not the way that I expected it to go by any means up there in Madison. And I think it's going to be an interesting couple of years up there in Madison. But at the end of the day, will be interesting to watch Wisconsin. Always a team, always a program that has the ability to find their way back up to the top. Just a little bit of work to do, it sounds like, in the offseason to get there. Notre Dame wins a game 28-7 where they look like Notre Dame. Probably for the first time this year, at least the Notre Dame that we've gotten accustomed to. They had 4 INTs in this game, and Leonard Moore, man, he is absolutely incredible. That is the best cornerback in the country by a pretty comfortable margin in some respects. That's an incredible football player, and I believe he's only a true sophomore, if I'm not mistaken. So, terrifying in every sense of the word. Incredible football player that will be incredible for quite some time for Notre Dame. C.J. Carr looks really comfortable in this offense right now. He looks like the guy that is going to be able to lead you to a 10-2 season and get you back in the CFP race. You got a tricky game against NC State coming up. I'm just going to be totally honest. Now, I think you should be able to win it. You're definitely going to be favored. I believe you are favored in that game right now. But at the end of the day, you got to be able to win out. And that's the big time question around Notre Dame. It's not to say that they shouldn't win the rest of the games on their schedule. It's just to say it's really hard to win 10 games in a row, and they're on their way there right now, but still quite a bit of work to do. They look really good. I feel really confident in them moving forward. One small slip up totally takes the season away. So good team, continue to develop and see if you can just continue that focus week over week. Clemson finally gets a win and looks good doing it. 38-10 over North Carolina. It looked good. It looked like the offense that you expected to see. Now the run game is still a problem. That's going to be a problem until hopefully next season they find a way to figure it out. But at the end of the day, this is a team that finally looked like the football team that we expected to see early in the season. Now, they're playing a North Carolina team that is comically bad, is the word that I've come up with. It is terrible in a lot of different ways. And Bill Belichick is not doing a whole lot better with the pettiness that he's showing towards the Patriots, with just the negative energy and the negative PR that he is bringing to that program. Not doing all that well. And I think the Belichick to UNC era is it's getting close to trivia question territory. It's getting close to who coached the UNC Tar Heels in 2025, and that's about it. So I don't know what to make of it. I don't think it's going to get better. I don't think a lot of the stuff around it's going to get better. I think he's probably gone at the end of the year, and UNC is just trying to find a way to pick up the pieces. They'll be pretty lucky to find 5 wins. If I'm being totally honest, I don't think they're going to find 5 wins. So I'm just being plainly honest about North Carolina. It's not good, and I don't think it gets a whole lot better. For Clemson, I think you got to get to 8-4 to convince people not everything is burning down. Now, you might still be hard-pressed to convince people of that, but you get Boston College, SMU, then Duke before Florida State. You got to go 3-0, and those are 3 relatively tough teams. You probably should win those games. Duke is going to be a whole lot tougher. There's no doubt about that. But this is still a team that can beat just about anyone on their schedule, plain and simple. They still have a very high talent level. They still have a quarterback that is capable of playing at a high level. They still have dudes. So it'll be interesting to see what Clemson does the rest of the way. I don't know what all of that means for Clemson fans. I don't know if they'd feel satisfied if they find a way to win out and still miss the ACC championship. But at the end of the day, it's a fun team to watch. It's an interesting team to watch at the very least in a case study of what happens with Dabo moving forward. Baylor was able to kind of escape with one here, 35-34, one that I just cannot believe the ending. Jace Brown's walking in for a touchdown, and his helmet comes off, and they rip it off, and he's in a position where the play has to be blown dead. He was walking in for a touchdown. He was in a position to absolutely win that game for Kansas State. They're forced to kick a field goal. Baylor walks right down the field and is able to return the favor, and then Kansas State gets blocked to end the game. It is a very tough way for that game to finish for Kansas State, and I think it's just kind of emblematic of what this season is. I don't think it's going to get a whole lot better for Kansas State. Now, they're playing better football. I just think they're going to play enough tough teams to where it's going to be really tough to stop the bleeding in a lot of ways. So we'll see what happens in the offseason. We'll see what happens the rest of the season for Kansas State. They obviously can play better football, and I tend to believe they will. But at the end of the day, just one of those games that you feel like you earned, you feel like you deserved, and you missed out on it. For Baylor, they needed this one really badly. They get a bye right before TCU and Cincinnati. They win those, and they're firmly in this mix. There's no doubt about that. That's going to be a really tall order for this team, especially because this defense continues to be a massive problem. I don't think it's going to get a whole lot better. How did Washington win this football game? I looked away in a lot of ways when Maryland was up 20-0 because I'm thinking, okay, Washington had the big-time game last week, was a little bit run down, traveled out there, and just didn't play their best football. No doubt about that, but Maryland went field goal, touchdown, field goal to open the game, and Washington was literally all over the place. They had nothing going for them offensively, and then it just flipped on a dime. The final 5 drives of the game, Washington scores 4 times, then they kneel the ball out to win the game. They go for 298 yards. Their defense gives up 52 in the final 4 drives for Maryland. It was a complete collapse for Maryland when they badly needed the win. If Maryland was able to get this one, they're 5-0. They're going into a Nebraska game on Friday where who knows what happens the rest of, or excuse me, Maryland gets Nebraska this weekend. Washington gets Rutgers this Friday. But at the end of the day, Maryland kind of needed this one, and I think this could be a sign of maybe it turning in the wrong direction. If they can beat Nebraska, everything's right back on track. I just don't have a lot of confidence in them beating Nebraska, at least as of right now. So we'll see what happens with Maryland moving forward. That's a tough loss to overcome. For Washington, it's one they badly needed, and they move forward. Still a shot. A lot of things to do. A lot of things to kind of take care of. If they get a win against Rutgers, which I expect them to do on Friday night, then they're in a position where they still get Oregon later in the season, at the very end of the season. If they're still alive at that very moment, everything's on the table for one game. Now, that's a tall order for a team that still has quite a few things to figure out, but you see the top end level in that back end of that game. I think this team can be dangerous the rest of the way. I think Ohio State just made them look a whole lot more benign than they actually are. Duke's able to win a game 45-21. Apologies for the Louisville-Cal situation there, but at the end of the day, they're able to win this one. It was a duel in the first half. It was 28-21. There were 7 touchdowns on the first 10 total possessions of this game, and then Duke just took over. They totally dominated this game. They hit a big-time kick before halftime to stretch it to 10 points, and then it gets ugly from there. They're able to kind of expand this thing. Cal has a couple of turnovers in the second half, and Duke is very much in the ACC race. They're 3-0 with a bye coming up this week, and then they got a huge one against Georgia Tech. If they find a way to win that one, then they still have Virginia and Clemson, but they're in a great position moving forward. A weird team that lost 2 games out of conference, and a lot of people wrote off, but still very firmly in this thing, and in 2 weeks, it could very well be a game against Georgia Tech that decides who goes to the ACC Championship against Miami at the end of the year. For Cal, they're heading into a bye as well right before UNC or Virginia Tech. This is still a team very well worth watching. Going out on the rest of the season and into 2026, I'm very well hoping that JKS is sticking around there. It sounds like he is, but everything's still very up in the air for the future of college football in that sense. But 8 wins this season would be incredible, and I think they're very well on their way to doing that. A little group of 6 scoreboard here. USF gets a big-time win, 54-28 over Charlotte. We'll talk about the American coming up in a second. USF has a big-time game against North Texas Friday that we will talk about on Thursday. I promise you that. But a lot of things happening in the American. Navy's able to get a big win over Air Force, 34-31. Totally escaped in this one and very badly needed to. Memphis gets a dominating win over Tulsa. UCLA gets a good win over Wyoming in the snow up there. Pretty cool in that game. JMU gets a 7-point win where you're probably going to need to flex a little bit more. And as Old Dominion gets a dominating win, 47-7 over Coastal Carolina. So That Sun Belt race is going to be really fun. That American Conference race is going to be downright incredible from start to finish. That thing is going to be absolutely crazy and starts this Friday night with a huge one between South Florida and North Texas, and we will absolutely talk about it. I can promise you that, but we got something to talk about that isn't quite as fun to talk about as college football is, but it needs to be talked about. The Kyron Lacy situation, and I'm going to pick my words very carefully because I don't want to say anything out of turn, obviously, for obvious reasons. But the Kyron Lacy situation, if you don't remember, earlier last year, I can't exactly remember. I believe it was earlier this year because he was getting ready for the NFL draft. He had done the pro day, he had done some of that stuff. There was an incident involving Kyron Lacy where there was a hit and run, and he was charged with the hit and run, and he was going to court for it. They were kind of going through the proceedings, and his defense attorney continued to maintain his innocence throughout this entire process. He did not budge at all, and that's something that a lot of defense attorneys do in some respects. But at the end of the day, that was kind of the big time story here, was the defense attorney just continued to push, and for good reason. He continued to push because it came out earlier last week before the games that it sounds like Kyron Lacy was not involved in that car wreck. It sounds like he was about 70 yards behind the wreck when it did happen. And since that time, as it was kind of all unfolding, Kyron Lacy decided to take his own life. During all of this time when he was building up to the trial, and it didn't look great for Kyron Lacy. If you remember a lot of the conversation around the college football world and beyond the college football world in a lot of respects around this, a lot of people made assumptions. A lot of people followed what some people said, and it created a energy around this kid, around this case, that it was going to be really hard to come back from, plain and simple. And I think everyone kind of understood that, and I think Kyron Lacy understood that, and I think that's the uniquely sad thing about this story is it was already really, really sad. It was already a kid that you had all this potential in the world, had unique amounts of talent, and was going to go to the NFL, and that was all kind of taken from him. And now it's more sad because it shouldn't have been taken from him. He didn't do anything wrong. He didn't hit that person. He didn't run away. He didn't do anything. And he had to take all of that. And I can't imagine what that's like. I can't imagine what that was like for Kyron. I can't imagine what it's been like for his family the rest of the way. A unique amount of respect to his defense lawyer because it's a very, very tough job in a lot of respects. And this is a very, very tough situation for a lot of people. But we have to talk about it. And I promise you, this will not be the last time that we talk about this. This will be something that continues to unfold. It sounds like they're doing an investigation into the case right now, and they very well should. Because this kid very well deserves justice. I can promise you that. And it's not something that we're going to leave by the wayside. It's not something that anyone in college football should leave by the wayside, because this is a really upsetting story. And it's a really heartbreaking story of a uniquely talented kid whose future was taken from him, plain and simple. And I'm not really sure what more there is to say. I'd love to, get into it a little bit more deeply. I don't want to on here in some respects, so I'll leave it there for the time being. A uniquely sad story of a kid that was looking at the world, was looking at all of the opportunity that he absolutely earned, and it was taken away from him. And you just got to hope that his family, that the people around him get a little bit of justice moving forward, because I don't know, just uniquely frustrating, uniquely heartbreaking, and a kid that deserved a whole lot more in a lot of respects from a whole lot of people. So I'll leave it at that for the time being. I don't know how much better there is to say things for something like that, because it's one of those things that you never really prepare for, particularly in this line of work in some respects. You never prepare to talk about a situation like that, but you have to. If you leave that by the wayside, then it keeps happening to kids like Kyron Lacy, and that cannot happen. So that will not be the last time we talk about it. Hopefully there is some justice that is paid. Hopefully that family gets any semblance of peace that is possible as of right now after what happened. But at the end of the day, a uniquely tragic story that got a little bit more tragic and a whole lot more disgusting this past weekend. So we will talk about it more. Everyone should be talking about it. If people aren't talking about it, I'd frankly call them out for it, but at the end of the day, I'll leave it there for the time being. No reason to belabor it a little bit more. We will talk about it more as it unfolds, and hopefully it unfolds in some type of justice for Kyron Lacy. So We'll talk about that more. We'll leave it by the wayside for the time being. We got a huge weekend coming up next weekend. We got huge games across the board, massive ranked matchups. A game in Dallas that you probably thought was going to be a ranked matchup going into this weekend, no longer. And a lot of things to figure out over there at Texas, but they're also favored in that football game. We'll talk about it all on Thursday. I promise you that. We will get into everything going on this upcoming weekend on Thursday, and then we'll break it all down. We'll get into all the craziness that will unfold. I can promise you that, because I think that's just the way college football is going forward. But we'll talk about it all as it unfolds. We will get into it all, no doubt about it. But thank you so much for tuning in. Please do like, subscribe, comment, do all of that great stuff. But I'll see you guys on Thursday to break down a massive Week 7 slate.